Hello các bạn, welcome các bạn đã quay trở lại với channel của Hannah's Lexus. Đây là channel cho các bạn đi từ khá tiếng Anh lên giỏi tiếng Anh nhờ vào lời khuyên của một cựu chuyên Anh khiến sống là Mỹ xin là mình. Ngày hôm nay thể theo yêu cầu của rất nhiều người, mình có mời ông chủ nhà ở bên đây. This is my landlord. Yeah. And you know, my viewers have been requesting your, cameo feature, whatever it is,
Sure.
for a year now, and I have been putting that off because you've been traveling too, right?
Sure.
Yeah. To start off, how many countries have you been to? Can you, off the top of your head?
It's hard for me to remember. I can't tell you exactly how many.
Yeah.
I've been to most countries in Western Europe except Scandinavian countries. I've been to most of the Eastern European or Central European countries like Romania, Bulgaria, Serbia, Czech Republic, all of those. I've been to Russia. I've been to a lot of the Stan countries like Uzbekistan.
Oh, is that how you call them, Stan countries?
Yeah, Stan countries. Been to several countries in Africa, a few, like Uganda, Nigeria, Kenya, Mozambique, Cote d'Ivoire, South Africa, so several African countries.
Do you have a favorite for each continent that you've been on?
Not really. That's a good question. I just enjoy traveling and usually enjoy the cultures where I am and the people I see and meet. So, yeah.
Did you spread it over the years, or do you have like a couple of years that you did a lot of traveling?
This was over a number of years.
Okay.
Yes. So, of course, Canada and Mexico, but those are neighboring countries. Yeah.
Is there any country that you have never been to that you would like to?
Lots of countries. I'd like to get to Australia.
Oh, okay.
Maybe New Zealand. So maybe Vietnam sometime.
Yeah.
I had the opportunity to go to Vietnam one time, but it didn't work out for some reason.
Oh, I'm surprised. I always thought that you've been to Vietnam before.
No.
Singapore, maybe you've been to.
I've been to Hong Kong.
No, okay.
And I've been to China, of course, and Japan, Korea. So those are some of the Asian countries. I've been fortunate. I've gotten to travel quite a bit.
Was it by choice at first, or you just...
It was some with my work and some by choice. So.
But the very first time you went abroad was because of work?
Yeah.
Okay.
I actually lived in Europe for 20 years, right outside of Vienna.
Did you pick Austria, or it just came up?
At that time I was working in Eastern Europe, so Austria was the logical place to live.
I've always wanted to go to Hungary for some reason.
Budapest?
Yeah,
yep. Yeah. I've been there so many times I can't count.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the city of Budapest is a beautiful city. The name comes from two sides of the river, Buda being the mountainside and Pest being more the plains. So when you're going down the Danube, the river kind of splits the city of Budapest in half, with the Buda side, the mountainside, and then the Pest side, the more plains, the east side.
I should read more and travel more. Out of the places that you've visited, which one is closest to your expectation and which one is so far away from what you've expected?
I will say this. The one place that was beyond my expectation was the Eiffel Tower in Paris. I'd traveled a lot already before I'd seen it, a lot of countries, but it was much bigger than I thought it would be. I mean, it's huge, especially if you go up to the top. You can take this elevator to the top, and it was an amazing experience for me. That was probably one place that was way beyond my expectations. The thing that I enjoy most, and when I travel, I try not to stay in hotels. I try to couch surf. I don't know if you know that term.
Yep.
Or Airbnb or something, because I really want to get to know people who live in that area. The big hotels and stuff, you're just isolated.
Yeah.
You're with a bunch of other foreigners often.
Right.
It's just not that interesting. I try to ride public transportation, walk the streets. That's how I travel.
So what have traveling taught you?
I think the most important lesson that you learn from traveling is that everywhere people are the same. They have the same problems. They usually have the same hopes and dreams and wishes. Of course, the context they're in shapes that to some extent, but usually people are very much alike.
So do you believe in something like a language barrier between people, or would be better to just know the language, learn the language really well to get to know somebody?
I think I have traveled in so many places where I didn't know the language, and I have even taught in places where I didn't know the language but had an interpreter. And surprisingly, I could kind of tell what people were saying or asking. And certainly when you travel, you can always communicate somehow. I've had many, many occasions where I'm sure the person didn't know English and I didn't know their language, but we communicated well enough to get done whatever we needed to do or get wherever we needed to get or even answer their questions to some extent. So there is certainly a language barrier, but I wouldn't make that a reason for not traveling. If I didn't know a language, I would still travel anyway.
Oh.
But it's always great to know the language.
Right,
And the
yeah.
better you know the language, the more in depth or the better you can really get to know the people.
Yeah, I have a friend that is learning Italian and Spanish at the same time, and she's always been, going back and forth between her country and
Yeah.
Italy, and it seems nice to just know the language and also go there to practice and
Right.
learn more about the culture.
Yeah, it's really great to be in the country where you actually are learning the language. I think you do need to learn languages. I think it expands your mind
Oh,
and also opens up other ways of thinking about things. Like English, you think a certain way. German, you think a different
right.
way.
Yeah.
So there are different ways of thinking that come with different languages, and when you know different languages, it expands your ability to understand and think differently. And to think more broadly, actually.
Okay, so there's a question. It could just be your personal thoughts on the difference between people in the West and in the East.
That's a good question, and it reflects, again, back on what I said before. In a way, culture goes deep, but it's also on the surface. There are core things that it seems like almost every culture speaks to. People do want to be happy, do want to have their basic needs met. People want to be loved. They need to have a sense of worth and of doing something that's worthwhile. Those are some of the basic things that are at the core of almost everyone. I just honestly don't see that much difference. I mean, I've studied cultures and I know the spatial difference. Like in some countries, you can be closer to people than others.
Yeah.
Americans want distance. If you get real close to them, they feel very uncomfortable. I've been in countries where, at the time, a few decades ago, for a guy to hold my hand walking down the street was very common
Oh, really?
and made me feel very uncomfortable. But in their culture, it was very common.
Oh.
And it was a sign of friendship, like real friendship. I've been in cultures where men kiss each other on the lips. It was not considered that the person was gay or, it's just with their culture. Made me feel terribly uncomfortable, but I got used to it, I just adapted. So there are all these surface cultural things, but the real core things are really the same, I think. I would like to see our world understand that and people live in peace, I think the opportunities that everybody would have would be much greater if we did.
So one thing that my viewers, because I did a very brief house tour
Right.
when I went down to get some food. So I did a brief house tour, and a lot of viewers have been asking about your bookshelf.
Okay.
Yeah, so they were very interested. Like,
Yeah, I love books and I love to read. I don't always remember the authors or even the titles, but I constantly read. And I always have a book with me, or I have my Kindle, with me.
Yep.
Something like that with me. So that if I get stuck in a traffic jam or a doctor's office or the line in a grocery store, I'll either be talking to somebody that I just met or reading. Because I also enjoy talking to people just out of the blue, and I find people so interesting. But books are interesting too. Books, yeah, so I've given away most of my books at this time. But the books that you saw on the bookshelf are some of my favorites. And that one set of books called The Great Books.
yeah.
That was really developed by a couple of people at the University of Chicago. And they thought that if a person studied in the original languages some of the great ideas that have developed over centuries, that would be a solid liberal arts education. And you could actually do a degree at the University of Chicago for a while in the great books, and you would have to read the Greek authors in Greek and the Latin authors in Latin, and of course French or whatever the language was, Chinese. So they always wanted you to read the books in the original language, which of course forced you to learn a language as well as be able to read. There's a guide to those books, and if a person ever got all the way through, which I haven't, you'd have a serious education. You would.
I mean, I did take a glimpse of the content, and it was in English, and I've been studying English for 20 years, and it's still, I mean, I felt like I barely scratched the surface of whatever is in the book.
Yeah, you may have been reading some earlier English
Yeah, I think
language.
so.
Yeah, so
It was hard.
right.
So is there a favorite genre that you like?
Genre?
Yeah.
I really like fiction, or what we call imaginative literature, fiction. I think in fiction you can really tell the truth. People often maybe think of fiction as fiction, not really true. But in fact, the only way to get to know really yourself deeply or another person is through fiction, is through imaginative literature. I think it opens the door to how we feel, to how we think, to how we see the world, and describes it in ways that sometimes we don't have the words for ourselves, but when a really good author describes or presents the story, it opens up a whole world for us that we haven't entered before. And so that's why I really like fiction, is because it tells the truth.
I think I could somehow relate to that, because I always think that I should really go back to take some courses on creative writing, or
Right.
because I feel like after working with coding for a while, I feel like my soul has become pretty barren, and I should really work to enrich that.
My eldest daughter, for a summer, she worked in Germany at a publishing company.
Oh.
And her job was to find the next book that they should translate from English into German. And so all day long she was reading all these books, and she said in the evening I would have to go back and read the classics because I was just reading basically junk. But when I got back to the classics, it kind of cleaned my mind out and refreshed me and helped me get another sense of the language and what was really important. And I think really good fiction by really good writers does that for you. It opens your world up.
So I have one friend that is a book maniac. So he has been collecting books for, I guess, over 10 years now. He's my age. And he's been collecting books. So right now, I think in his house, he has over 10,000 books.
Oh my goodness, whoa.
I know. And I asked him how many books out of those 10,000 has he read, and he was like, maybe 20 to 30%, but he couldn't help it. He was like, when I showed him the your bookshelf, he was like, I need to get the great books, that collection. But he was really fond of your great books. The great books.
Right. You might find it online now, just in like Kindle or something. I don't know.
I see.
I don't know how you find it now.
I think we tried once, and the whole set cost around $1,000, but then with shipping to Vietnam, I don't know how that will work. So.
Is it in the electronic version yet? Probably not.
Yeah, but he's been collecting real books. Physical books.
Right. Okay.
So my viewers are also interested to know a bit about your previous jobs.
My undergraduate degree is chemical engineering.
Oh.
And I worked as a chemical engineer for a couple of years, 2 or 3 years, and decided I wanted to do something different. So then I really got into education. That's when I was living in Europe and the other countries. I was helping to start like bachelor's level education in difficult access countries at the time. That's really what I did, was kind of help start education by extension. And now of course it's all online, but back then there was no online. So it was by extension, where the teacher or the professor travels to you and you meet with a small group. And so that's what I was doing all over Eastern Europe and really Africa and some parts of Asia as well.
So did you go to the remote areas to teach? Or
Exactly. Right.
Very interesting. And you did that for how many years?
I did that for about 20 years. Here we have what are called charter schools. They're like public schools. They're publicly financed. The parents have a little more say as to what's in the education and how difficult it is. And so there's a very good charter school here that was well rated, well ranked in the United States, and I was headmaster of that for a while and had about 6 principals who were heads of schools under me, and we were trying to shape it into a great educational opportunities.
I don't know what's the difference between a headmaster and a principal.
Okay, well, they really called me the president.
Okay.
So in a chart, I was like the guy that headed everything. And then I had 6 principals under me, and each one of them was responsible for a school.
Oh, I see.
There were 3 grade schools, and then there was 1 middle school and 1 high school. So 5 grade schools, so 4 grade schools. So the grade schools fed to the middle school, to the high school.
I
So
see.
you began in kindergarten, and in this educational system, you went all the way through high school before you went to college.
Wow.
So that's kind of.
So did all of the kids stay throughout, yeah.
Some did, some didn't. It didn't fit everybody.
Oh, okay.
And it was really difficult to get in. The waiting list was like 6,000 people. So to get in kindergarten, the waiting list is like 6,000 people. So you have to get your name on the list when you're first born
Really?
to get into
Wow.
the school.
Yeah.
That's the way it
So
was.
You had to start from kindergarten, right? You can't just jump into the middle school.
No, they don't
No.
really let you do that.
Oh.
Occasionally, but not very often. And it's called the Classical Academy, so you studied classics, really. Even in kindergarten, you'd do like artist reviews. So they'd have a print of a very famous piece of art, and you'd have a discussion about it as a kindergarten.
Oh, wow.
So you were exposed to good art and literature from the beginning. That was the idea.
I would never think of that. All of the kids I know do in kindergarten in Vietnam is just drawing stuff and maybe learn some ABCs.
Yeah.
But
The interesting thing was, though, to help kids find their voice. Unless a kid can talk about what they're learning, unless they have the opportunity
Yeah.
to talk about what they're learning, you don't know really what they understand and what they do not understand.
Right.
I mean, you can give tests and that you can give written tests, but you really need that conversation, I think. So.
I mean, sometimes at work, I use that excuse a lot, and I do know it's an excuse to say that I'm an introvert. That's why I don't explain things well or talk well, but I do know that it's just an excuse. I mean, it has nothing to do with introversion. It's just a lack of communication skill. But yeah, so I do want to work on that, and I think that's a major problem in our country or in Asian culture, not speaking.
Yeah, I don't know.
Not speaking out enough.
Yeah, for me, along that
Yeah.
line is that I wanted the teachers in my classroom to be more interested in the voice of their student than their own voice.
Right.
And sometimes a teacher loves to perform. They enjoy being in front of the class, and they're good at it, But I wanted the heart of the teacher to want to hear the voice of the student more than their own voice. And that's not always easy. Teachers like to be on the center of the stage.
Okay, so there's a question about stress, how to overcome stress.
How do I overcome stress?
Maybe in your younger days.
I'll tell you, when I was in college or younger,
Yeah.
I think I lived stressed out
Oh, okay.
because I was really busy.
Uh-huh.
I was taking chemical engineering, which was considered one of the most difficult colleges. I was playing basketball at the Division I level. I was also leading the second largest student Christian movement in the country, and so I really had zero time. And I think it took me 2 years after college just to begin to relax. I think the most important lesson that I learned about stress was, first of all, you can't get it all done. Why stress over it? Just get what you can't. Make sure you're doing the most important things every day, and then don't worry about the rest, because your days get so filled up with too many things to do. And so that's why you keep priority lists of these are the things that need to be done today,
Okay.
and you do the top ones. If the bottom one rises to be important the next day, it does, but if it doesn't, you don't do it. The next day, you do your list, you do the top ones, and you make sure you leave time to think. I think a person needs to spend 15 minutes a day planning their day. I think they need to spend an hour a week on the weekend, perhaps, or something, planning their week. I think they should try to spend a half a day a month thinking about the next month and where they've come from. And once a year, spend 3 days thinking about where did I come from this last year and where would I like to go next year. And it takes that constant attention to priority to get where you want to go. Otherwise, you don't.
Have you always been doing that?
Not always, but I don't always do it so regularly now. But I try to do it, on a regular basis. Nobody's perfect to do all these things, You get all these great ideas, but nobody's perfect, and you
But
just.
when did you really start doing that habitually?
I think I started doing that when I was just out of college. Begun to look at that as a way to keep myself planned and make sure I was doing the right things. Because life calls on you to do so many things that you really have to know what the right things are.
And have you always been such an overachiever since you were young until, because it sounded like you've always been doing a lot of things, multitasking.
Multitasking doesn't work real well, but it wasn't by choice. But I often found myself leading the organizations I happened to be involved in. And often I was asked to do that. So, and I do believe that if you're going to do something, just throw yourself into it. And I also believe this: if something's worth doing, it's worth not doing well. Now, there's a catch in that idea, because if it's really worth doing, it's worth doing no matter what.
I see.
And so some things that are really worth doing, you may not be great at it, but they really are worth doing anyway. And there are some things that you'll be naturally great at because that's who you are and that's your natural tendency. But when I was leading organizations, I found myself having to do administrative work, which I didn't like, but it needed to be done. And so I did it as well as I could because it had to be done and it was worth doing. But so sometimes things are worth doing and not doing well.
And these are not from a book, right? These quotes are not from a book.
No.
Right? Because I feel like these could be in a, they could.
These are not from a book.
They could make some motivational quotes out of this clip right now. I think that kind of addresses, because there's a question about how to maintain motivation.
I think that's a really good question. And I've actually done some reading and thinking about this. And if your viewers are pretty good at English, I would recommend an online course that comes from Yale University. There's a course on happiness. It's called the Happiness Lab. The person who did it thought she'd have 30 students. 1,600 showed up. It's been the most attended or sought after class in the history of Yale University. She looks at the real research regarding happiness and what makes a person happy. And she basically says our mind lies to us about what makes us happy. Our mind doesn't really tell us the truth. One of the things she talks about in this lab, and I think it's correct, is how to really persevere. And one of the things she says is not only do you have the goal that you want, your wish, and you have to visualize the outcome, but the other thing you have to do is to visualize all the obstacles along the way, what the potential obstacles for, and then plan how you will overcome those obstacles. Because if you don't visualize the obstacles as well as the outcome, when you hit the obstacle, you might have the tendency to give up and not go on with the grind.
Right.
And so her point is that not only do you have to see where you're going, you have to see the obstacles and plan how you're going to get through them. And in so doing, when you hit the obstacles, they don't surprise you, they don't knock you off, because you've already visualized that obstacle and what might happen.
What if I don't have enough experience to visualize enough obstacles in advance?
You can, believe me.
Okay.
You just do it at the level you can,
Okay.
but you do it as in much detail as you can too. You really want to visualize in detail.
Okay.
You want to see not only goal in detail, but visualize the obstacles in pretty serious detail. Like, if you want to write. So you think, oh, I'd like to write something. And so you have to think about what the outcome would be.
Right.
But you have to think about the obstacles. Oh, I've got to work as, a day job. I've got a chat room, room to keep up.
Right.
I have all these things to do.
Yeah.
So you visualize those obstacles, and then what's my plan for overcoming them? When will I write? Will I write during my lunch period? Because I'm an introvert and don't want to talk to anybody.
Yeah.
Will I write 15 minutes in the morning or an hour? So you visualize all the obstacles and then really plan how you're going to overcome them when you hit them.
I see.
And it helps you get there.
I might have to adopt the half-empty glass attitude, in order to really visualize those obstacles. Us, the youngsters being dramatic, but sometimes we do feel like we're at rock bottom. It's like the end of the world, and we don't know how to get ourselves out of that. Do you have any advice for it?
I've been there. I felt that, was at rock bottom. First of all, have a good cry. You just got to let your emotions out. Embrace your emotions. Don't try to push them off or think they're not real. just allow yourself to really feel the rock bottomness of your situation. I don't think that's a word, but and every time you get there, just let yourself really feel it. And then begin to take steps towards, how do I get out of the situation that I'm in? The other thing, when you're young, you don't realize it, but time does heal. And time gives perspective. Time helps. And so you may feel terrible today and you think this is the end of the world. In a week from now, probably won't feel quite so end of the world. A month from now, a year from now. But just take steps to do something different. People want miracles, dramatic steps. Sometimes that happens. Most of the time, it's the little steps that get you going.
There were times that I just couldn't get out of bed at all. And I just, whatever, I just lay in bed. That's it. That's all I did for maybe a week or two, or maybe a month at most. And then I got bored of that and found something else to do. So it wouldn't be too bad. And it's always good to have a support group around you as well. It
is, Somebody to come and say, get out of bed, right?
Exactly. What is your perspective on regrets?
Emotionally, everybody is different. Some people become overwhelmed by regret. Some people don't. Probably the most important thing to do with regret, and everybody has it, if you live life, you're going to have regret, is to ask yourself why you have that regret. What can I personally learn from that situation to help me become a better person? Are there people I need to ask forgiveness from that are associated with that sense of regret? Do I have the courage to ask for forgiveness? Take those steps to move away from it, because you can't live with regret or in regret your whole life. When those memories come back up, just go through that process again of what you learned. Did you ask forgiveness? Yes. Is there anything more you can do to heal that situation? No. And then you just move on. You can't live there, though.
A question asks, what is your wish at the moment?
I have two wishes, a couple of wishes. One is, there's something I really want to write, and I've been mulling it over in my mind, and it's getting to the point where it has to come out. I'm going through the process right now of thinking through the obstacles to getting this written and planning to how to overcome them. I'm in that process. And the other thing I do as a hobby right now is day trade. I'm really enjoying it. So I have some wishes or interests in that area. And I'm not sure how that will play out, but
The market hasn't been doing well these days, right?
Yeah, but for me it doesn't matter.
Okay.
The market can go up or down because if you day trade, you don't care. The thing about it is you do want volatility, because then you attempt to take a little bit out of the market each day. It is probably the most difficult thing I've ever done, even harder than the chemical engineering degree, because unless you know yourself deeply and understand fear and greed and how that affects you, you can't do it very well unless you know how to embrace these emotions without letting them control you. You can't day trade. So for me, the reason I started day trading is because I wanted to go on this personal journey of learning more about myself and who I am at the deepest levels. And it's been a great journey. You can lose your shirt doing it, so don't do it.
There's a question about how did you and I get to know each other?
I got this email. I was advertising a room for rent. And Hannah emailed me and asked if she gave me this rather long, lengthy paragraph describing herself, what she was doing, etc., etc. I don't think she knew it at the time, but it was quite common for me when I was advertising for a room to get a long email from somebody from another country who said they needed a room, and then I would start a conversation with them through email, and eventually they would ask me for my bank accounts, and I knew they were scamming me. And so I thought, Hannah's another scammer, but I always responded politely to all these things, just because I didn't know, And something she said or ways she phrased it or something, I realized she wasn't. So that was how it began.
To be honest, your room, the room that you advertised on Craigslist, was too nice. It was too good to be true, and the rent is also very low as well. So it's just like... I was also in doubt if this is a real post or not.
Oh, really? That's so interesting. Because the reason I rent rooms is because... Number one, I don't like living in a big house by myself because it's empty. And number two, I realized that there are people like you who actually need a room. Why not share your blessings in a way? You know?
Yeah.
It makes life much more interesting than closing yourself off.
What was your first impression of me and how it has changed up until now? Because I'm about to leave, so you could just
That's
say
a great
the truth.
question. That's a great question. I really enjoyed meeting you.
Oh, thank you.
I think I picked you up with your suitcase
Yeah.
initially.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was a lot of fun. It was just fun watching your journey here, both at FedEx and your next step. My impression has not changed. I thought you were a lovely person the first
thank
time I met you. And I even think that more now.
Oh, thanks.
And I really do wish you the best. And I think you're going to have a great future, an enjoyable life. And we need to keep in touch.
We do. We need to.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, whenever you
Yeah.
go to San Francisco, or if I have the chance to go back. Here.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's always a place to stay. I hope you weren't too bored.
It's very fun. I always enjoy talking to you. I always feel like I learned a lot from our conversations, especially in the beginning of my YouTube journey. I got a lot of haters. I mean, I still have a lot of haters now.
Oh.
But yeah, you gave me a lot of advice on that.
Yeah.
So,
Well, thank you. I've enjoyed it.
thank you. Thank you, you
And
too.
blessings.
Bye.
Bye-bye.